Hello and welcome to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller, and through my seminar and coaching business, Wings Unfolded, I help people who love what they're doing, but they're not really sure where it's going. I usually make these videos from the standpoint of working out stuff in my life where I might be feeling stuck. And my hope is that as I work out the stuck places in my life, I can help you work out any of the stuck places in your life. So welcome to Growing in Uncertainty with me. So last weekend, my son and I had an experience that is generating a lot of reflection time from me in these last few days or so. I realize that it's possible to look at what happened in this story that I'm going to share with you from many different perspectives or vantage points. And each perspective has a little bit different flavor, a little bit different energy around it. And so I wanted to share with you how I'm working with all of those different perspectives, and you know what that means to choose the right perspective. So let me get into the story. My son and I last weekend were walking downtown, our small town, and we wanted to take a look at the chalk art that was going on downtown. And we happened upon a man who was doing a beautiful chalk drawing, and we complimented him. And then without much prompting from us at all, he started sharing a lot of his life story. And me being who I am, I thought it was fascinating and wanted to, really listen to where he was going with his story. My son, on the other hand, I think just wanted to keep going and look at the chalk art. Well, the man who was talking to us kept going on in his story, and pretty soon another man joined, and this other man took a pause in the conversation as an opportunity to start sharing his life story. And as he shared his life story, it became apparent that he actually wanted to do a little proselytizing. He very definitely belonged to a certain religion and felt the need to try and express his religious beliefs to us. And it went on for quite a long time, I would say around 20-25 minutes. Before he decided that he was done sharing and could go on his way. And afterwards, my son and I were leaving, and my son was affected a lot more intensely than I was. He was very, very disturbed by the whole situation and wanted to go home. It was just too much, could be being still on the tail end, hopefully, of a pandemic, and not having had a lot of interactions with people that we don't know. My son is still, I think, a little bit sensitive about those kinds of interactions, whereas I tend to go out into public a lot more and meet people I don't know more often than he does. So I have a lot more experience with that, a lot more tolerance for that. So anyway, as we came home and we sort of unpacked the events of what happened and what we were hearing from the chalk guy and the proselytizer, my son and I really unveiled a lot of trigger spots for us, things that these men said that might have rubbed us the wrong way or kicked up some concerns and emotions for us. And so we talked all of those out and just had a moment to reflect together on that. And I'm sure he has reflected even more on it since then, as I have reflected even more on it since then. So anyway, as I have thought about it, I've realized that one of the best tools that I have in dealing with perspectives is what the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, my coach training program, has given me, and it's called the Energetic Self-Perception Chart. It looks like that. I know that may not be decipherable on the video, but it is a wonderful chart. It's a wonderful way of understanding different perceptions, different ways of perceiving experiences in our lives or perceiving our life in general. And I think I already said this. There are 7 different suggested perceptions, and I thought that I would take you all through those 7 different perceptions, but modified slightly, just to really, really show how this story can be seen through 7 different lenses. So as I go through these 7 different ways of perceiving this situation, I want you to notice how your energy shifts as you hear these perceptions, and see how, what emotions come up for you. If you could put yourself in my shoes experiencing this, what emotions might come up for you using certain perceptions or lenses. So the first perception that I could use in this story that I was sharing with the chalk guy and the proselytizer is what I call self-blame. This is the perception where I could have blamed myself for allowing that, conversation to go on as long as it did, and for allowing us to be in that situation and having it affect my son so much. I've been raised in a culture where women oftentimes are supposed to listen to men. And I could blame myself for once again demonstrating that this cultural experience still exists. Or I could blame myself for still needing to work on my boundaries. This is another example of how I don't know how to define the boundaries in my life and really live by them. Or maybe I could blame myself for this being yet another time when I shied away from confrontation. Or I could look at it as I failed my son, who is really scared. We should have just walked away. So the self-blame, you can hear threads of that self-blame in those statements that I might be able to say to myself if I'm looking at this story through that lens of self-blame. So that's one way. The second way that I could perceive this situation is through blame, outward blame, blaming the other people. We weren't there for any of that conversation. We were there to just see art. How could those men do that? What's wrong with them? Or I could blame our culture for making me afraid to interrupt those men, because if I had interrupted the proselytizer, maybe he would have gotten even more angry at me. And that's really what prevented me from walking away, is that I live in a culture of fear. I could have put that blame outward. I could even blame my son if I really wanted to. I wouldn't, but I could even say, well, my son should have told me he didn't feel comfortable, and he should have told me we needed to walk away. It's his fault. So that is another way that I could choose to perceive this story. The third way that I could perceive this story is through taking ownership or responsibility for what happened. Sort of accepting, all right, this happened. They were both men who meant well in their own way. They were choosing to express their well-meaning in very different ways than I would have or my son would have. I probably should have shut it down sooner, and next time I will. So in this perception, I'm sort of forgiving the men. I'm sort of giving an excuse for them, and also saying next time I'll do something about that. The fourth way that I could perceive this story is through caring for those other men, or feeling like perceiving it through service. Phoenix and I, my son and I, were giving a service to these men by allowing them to speak, allowing them to share their story. It seemed like it really meant a lot to them to be able to share their life stories with us, and any other expressions that they had for us. It really seemed to make them happy, and making them happy could also make us feel happy too. So that would be another perception, through the act of service, maybe we did some good. A fifth way of perceiving that experience would be through more of a win-win lens. This was an opportunity for my son to have an experience of meeting people he didn't know. I know that he can feel anxious about meeting people he doesn't know, but the more he does it, the more comfortable he'll become with it. And I know he had an intense reaction to it, but maybe that will help him to know what he can do next time. We can talk together about some inner tools that will help calm him when he's in those kinds of situations. So it was a real learning opportunity for him. And it also provided us the opportunity to connect and reflect about what happened together. I could share with him some different ways of looking at it. So he's going to get some of these tools that I'm talking about with you guys today, these tools of being able to shift your perspective. And that's going to really help him out too. And it helps me out as a parent because I'm using parenting tools that, I can always get better at that. I can always practice that. And so that's an opportunity for me. And it was also an opportunity for those men to engage with people that looked very different from them. My son tends to wear a lot of makeup that is kind of goth looking, if you know what that style means. It's a lot of black drawn on lines, and a lot of eye makeup, and his hair is, shaved and colored. And so he looked quite different from, I think, what maybe these two gentlemen are used to seeing out and about town. So it was an opportunity for them to witness somebody who could be receptive to what they were having to say, even though he looked very different from them. So it could have been a win-win situation for those men as well. A sixth way of perceiving that is through just the joy of life. We all react to life in our own way. There's no right or wrong way about it. And we got to witness that experience. That was really a wonderful experience to just witness different human behavior. We're all different, and there are so many different expressions of humanity in this world, and we're able to witness that in a safe way. And we also had the opportunity to, react in whatever way seemed right to us in the moment. And we're learning about ourselves, and that learning is an ongoing process. And so we're just kind of focusing on taking joy in that process. The final way of perceiving this could be complete non-judgment. There is no right or wrong. There was no right or wrong in that situation. It was just another life experience to add to the collection. It's, kind of that can be a challenging perception to use if you're sick, or you know somebody who's sick, or you've lost a loved one, obviously. So that may or may not be the appropriate perception that you want to use in every single life experience. But it is a perspective, This is just another experience. It's neither good nor bad. So as I sit with all 7 of these ways of perceiving this life experience, this life story that I had over the weekend, it's I think hard to say which one is the right one, because in my belief system, it really depends. There really is no right or wrong way, but it's really up to me or my son to decide which perception feels best or works best or fits best with where we are in our lives right now. And of course, our perception of this story might change over time. It probably will. It still is very fresh. And so the perception that I choose to use for that story might be different than the one that I choose to use 5 years from now when I revisit it. And, oh yeah, I remember the chalk guy and the proselytizer. That was a really interesting experience. And I can reflect on maybe some similar experiences that I've had since then, since that time, and maybe think about, wow, that experience really helped me know what to do in this situation. I drew upon that experience. So my perception of the chalk guy and the proselytizer might be, wow, that was a fantastic learning opportunity. I'm so glad that happened. Whereas right now, I might not be very glad that happened. Like, oh man, I really wanted to see the chalk art in town, and we weren't really able to because of that. So anyway, that's just something to think about. Reflect on experiences that have happened in your life and how your perception of those experiences have changed over time. I think a lot of us have that experience of being teenagers and our parents had curfews for us. And at the time, it was really annoying and it would kind of make us mad. But now that I'm a parent and I have a teenager of my own, I totally get why, it's important to have a curfew. So, that's a way that my perception on that has changed over time. So how can we go about choosing a perception or a lens to view certain life experiences as they happen? My process begins with checking in with my triggers first. What was triggered inside of me when that experience happened? What emotions are coming up? What thoughts are coming up? What knee-jerk reactions are coming up for me? How hysterical is it? Remember last week I talked about if it's hysterical, it's historical. What part of my history might those triggers be coming from? What old stories are getting kicked up for me? And what do I need to do in order to process the energy of those triggers? Because I'm not really going to be able to choose the wisest perception for a life experience until I have processed those triggers. So really, really an important step in the process is processing anything that's coming up for you in a life experience first. Next, I would think through all of those perceptions like I laid out for you. I made a list of all the different ways that I could look at that experience, and I could put them all out on the table for myself and see them and really experience the emotion that comes with each one of those perceptions. And once I have all of those options on the table, I can ask myself, which perception am I the most drawn to? You know, this doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the one that I'm going to settle on, but which is the one that like tugs at me the most? It might be, I know for me in the first couple of days after it happened, the first perception, the self-blame, was the one that was tugging at me the most. You know, and it's just important to notice that. It doesn't mean that, you know, it's written in stone. That's always how I'm going to feel about it. That's it. That's how I need to perceive what happened. It's my fault. You know, it doesn't have to be that. But you can sit with it and just see what that feels like. Then you can ask yourself the next question. And the next question is, which perception would help me in my growth and development in my life right now? Another way of asking that question is, which perception is for my highest good? You know, I have a strong value in developing myself personally and professionally, and, you know, really becoming the wisest version of myself I can possibly be in any situation in life. And when my perceptions of life experiences are aligned with my values, that's when I know that I'm going to feel good about it for the long term, or it's going to stick for the long term. But if a perception of an experience in my life isn't aligned with my values, then chances are it's going to feel heavy emotionally. It's going to weigh me down, and it's not really, hopefully, going to last. And if it does last, it's not going to be a good way. Yeah, it's not going to be the wisest way. It's not going to be for my higher good. It's not going to help me develop personally. So that might be a way to help you decide if you're like, I don't know how to look at this situation. You know, if I were Mother Teresa, maybe I should look at it this way. But you're not Mother Teresa. You're who you are right now in this moment in time. So you have to choose the perception that leads you towards the person that you want to become. So, which perception from today's story of the chalk guy and the proselytizer serves my highest good? Right now, I'm leaning more towards the fifth perception, which was the win-win situation, the one where I learned something, my son learned something, and hopefully those guys learned something too. We all got something out of that experience. There's a takeaway for everyone, and it might still be unfolding for all of us in what direction we want to, you know, use that information, but we all got information from that exchange that day. And it, you know, I have to trust that it all serves our highest good. So, if you want to know more about the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching energetic self-perception chart that I mentioned earlier, and the 7 different levels of perceiving or energetically experiencing life, you might consider taking the Energy Leadership Index assessment with me. This is an assessment that helps show you energetically how you tend to perceive your life. You know, do you tend to perceive your life in more of a blame way? Do you tend to perceive your life in that win-win way? It can be helpful to know how you tend to react to your life, or how you tend to respond to stressful situations that suddenly come up. You know, you might be going through your life feeling very much like, oh, I want to help everybody, and then something bad can happen and all of a sudden you're blaming yourself. You know, this assessment can help you see that in your life and point out where those patterns take place in your life, so that you can develop that awareness around it and learn some tools for working with it and not going with your knee-jerk reaction every time, but trying something new, trying a different perspective in the moment. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, you can go to my website, www.tess-miller.com, and you can either read about the ELI assessment on my website. There's a place on my website for that, or if you want to set up a free coaching conversation and we can talk more about that, I'd be happy to do that with you. So I hope this message really resonates with you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm always so grateful for your presence whenever you watch these videos, whether it's live or later on my Facebook page, on my YouTube channel, wherever it is. Please like or share these videos as much as possible. That helps other people find me and hear these messages. And if there's anybody that might benefit from this, then it'd be so wonderful if you'd share that with them. You can stay tuned to any updates of mine on Facebook or LinkedIn under my business name, Wings Unfolded. I seem to be getting a lot of text messages right now. Sorry about that. And you can find me by name, Tess Miller, on Instagram and YouTube. And if there's anything you would like help with in relation to making any life transitions or getting clarity about someplace in your life where you're feeling a little stuck, feel free to send me a private message. I'd love to connect with you. And remember that it's okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Have an amazing week and take care.